Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yuri Folaring. Let's review the nationwide strike that has been relaxed, I believe is the word that Labour preferred to use. But generally, we've been speaking about a suspension of the strike. Labour has said that's for the next, a 1 week extension, a 1 week suspension, after which it will be resumed. You all know, of course, that there's a very wide gap between the proposal of the federal government and that of Labour. The federal government has committed now to do something more than 60, but Labour is asking for 497,000. So, well, that's that. That's in there. There's still plenty of room for negotiation. We'll be looking today, with the help of a legal luminary, of course, the legal angle to this strike. Labour, as you know, has said that the right is enshrined in the Constitution and that they have a right to strike. You know what happened when the strike, was in force. There were losses. There were economic losses. Everything that could be done to prevent it did not happen, did not see success, because Labour insisted that it had to go on strike. And in the aftermath, it was saying that actually they have legal backings. I recall hearing the Minister of Labour saying at the time that the strike caught the federal authorities, metaphorically pants down, in the sense that there just was no inkling of it. We were all talking, and then to just hear that Labour had declared the strike. So what are the legal rights? Indeed, what is the etymology of the word strike, seen from a legal perspective? From what is the juristic understanding of that word strike? And should Labour be able to go on strike? They have said it is a fundamental right. It's not about Nigeria. But when it can do so much damage to the economy, and the purported beneficiaries of the strike are those who are going to be hit most, and indeed were hit the most. And so people, just heaved a sigh of relief when, after 1.5 days of, shall I say, damage had happened, then our life sort of returned to normal. And the prospect of it's a suspension, or they said a relaxation, people are using the word suspension instead. Can we see a return to those dour times? That's what we'll be looking at. But, let's just have an overview, if you want, of the strike and how it happened, what its effect was in various parts of the country. Our guest is going to be Dr. Tunji Abayomi. I'm using the continue and the future tense in the sense that he's not with us, but will be with us. Dr. Tunji Abayomi, as you know, is a constitutional lawyer, and he'll be looking into the question. But let's take that background report first.
Despite the intervention of the National Assembly leadership, the organized labor begins a nationwide strike. The industrial action starts in Abuja. Petrol stations are still selling fuel. Other parts are ghost town. Lawyers are stranded as judiciary workers shut down the Court of Appeal in Abuja. Mr. Job Ako is the Financial Secretary, Judicial Staff Union of Nigeria, Court of Appeal chapter. He says they are in full compliance.
We, at this chapter, we are not take anything less than to comply fully with what is going on. Yes, of course, they may say it's not realistic, but our points still remain. Our federal government sat down to think about, to break down at least what they are proposing. Because we learned that they are proposing 60,000 naira. And for a family of 5, can 60,000 naira be enough to buy a bag of rice in the market?
Staff at the National Assembly were also left stranded as they were denied access to the complex. Vice Chairman of the Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria, National Assembly, Matthew Obaje, says the PASAN is in solidarity with the NLC.
Well, if you look at the country generally, everything is on the high side. Most especially the common man. The masses are really passing through hell. You understand? So if federal government will consider its own people and also yield to the quest of the people. We are not saying federal government must pay, but they should do something reasonably that we can consider.
In Lagos, all operations at the local airport have been cancelled. These are images from the Murtala Muhammed International Airport.
So I have been here since 5:30 a.m. I was supposed to board United Nigeria. Unfortunately, the airports have been grounded by NLC. Obviously, the strike has commenced here at the airports. I've been here in the airport. All the airlines practically grounded. All the officials have told us that the planes are ready to move, but unfortunately, the NLC have taken over the control towers and they can't move. So that's the situation I'm in right now.
In Ogun State, the NLC team was asked to monitor compliance to the ongoing indefinite strike.
We have just concluded the hierarchy of NLC yesterday into 2 meetings, and we are all poised and prepared for this action. And as I'm standing before you, we are only respecting you as a partner in progress, as a press gentleman. And as we are living here, we have designated all the affiliates of the 53 affiliates of the Nigerian Labour Congress to man individual government and private sector formation in ensuring that this particular directive is adhered.
In Delta, there is strict compliance to the strike in Asaba, the state capital, as the Unity Secondary School is under lock and key. Students who are supposed to begin their external examination are now returning to their homes as no teacher is in the premises. Report also suggests that Labour Union has shut down the national grid, resulting in nationwide blackout. The Transmission Company of Nigeria in a statement said the national grid was shut down at about 2:19 a.m. The Benin transmission operator under the Independent System Operations Unit of the TCN reported that all operators were driven away from the control room and without any form of control or supervision, the Benin Area Control Center was brought to zero.
Well, thank you very much. As an earlier report that went out, it gives us an overview. And that last aspect of the report where the national grid was shut down as a result of labor leaders, barring workers from coming there. In fact, you heard the report just a few seconds ago say that operatives were chased out. Now, this is something that Labour quickly responded to, denouncing and denying that particular bit of the report, that this was not true. In fact, that's what led NLC to go on and explain that they wanted to be understood that they do have a right, and it is guaranteed by the Constitution, again, as part of the labor response, to go on strike. So, on the one hand, the strike, the national grid being shut down by Labour, they say that, well, Labour is an affiliate, the national grid workers are affiliate members, and so they are bound to follow them. But as to them actually virtually going and disconnecting things themselves, that part of it Labour denied and said was not true. And they thought it was a campaign, said as much, a campaign of calumny against Labour's earlier stated right to go on strike. So you can call in. As I said, one doesn't want to say too much as to the legal angle because it's a technical and a professional aspect. We'll wait for those who are so trained. We're going to be joined by Dr. Tunji Abayomi. But if you had any thoughts on this whole matter about the legal aspects, perhaps you could phone in your preliminary thoughts on the matter. What are, in your mind, you might well be a lawyer, that might be very helpful, but anybody, what are your thoughts as to the legality or otherwise of this strike? There are those who would take it from, the human angle perspective, that, look, the big fish, the big guns in society are not going to be affected by this strike. Whatever happens, they can always weather the storm. It doesn't matter how scarce or how expensive things be, they'll be able to weather the storm. But what about the regular, ordinary Joe, citizen Joe, so to speak? Reverend Dominic, good morning to you, sir. Your thoughts?
Good morning. Jimmy, how are you today?
Very well, thank you.
This is my thought as a man who has been part of the struggle in Nigeria.
Yeah.
The guest this morning used to be our guys in those days in Nadeko. There's no legality or illegality of strike. Strike is like a time of civil war. Everything breaks down. And this is why every nation must try to avoid it. Because you may start it, you won't know how it ends. So there's not actually any legality or not legality. It's a right of people to protest when things do not go well. I started from about textile mill when we were in textile mill. When those days things don't work well, we shut down the factory. It's that like rebellion against the system. There's no legality about it. But I want to plead to the federal government to not allow it to repeat again. The information we get from our friends who is in this negotiation is not palatable. I think by now, the gospel truth is this, Yori. I've said before, who is planning for me? Yori, you are working for a station, you earn salary. Who is planning for some of us who are not working? That is the question we ask every day. Even though they are going to pay labor this and that, the majority of Nigerians who are not working in any company, who are private citizens, who is planning for us? The person that plans for us is good governance. When the cost of things is okay, and again, Yori, let's be frank. What can we use 60,000 to buy today? How can you use 60,000 to at least 22 children? If you have 2 children and a wife and a husband, we must be frank. What makes me feel good about this government is about the president. The head is one of us. You know how he's struggling in Nadeko to get the best governance. So he knows what is going on. And I don't think he loves what is happening. He must talk to the negotiating team to come to a point. If Nigeria pay 95 to 100,000, yes, it may be better. Less than $70, it will be good. Anything more than 100,000 will throw us into more confusion. So we're pleading to the labor. Come around 1995, but let's stop, dragging this thing. I had the statement from the federal government secretary. Those statement is not necessary now. The deed has been done. In this palace, that's what we call the pull and the push. What is pushing labor to strike? What is pulling them not to strike? So there must be push and the pull. There's something that pushes you to do what to do. We must give them minimum wage, not living wage. But within 95 or 100, I think it's better. God bless Nigeria.
All right, then. Thank you very much, Reverend Dominic. Appreciate your calling in. As I said, you don't have to be a lawyer to call in, but he's called in, and he was a unionist at one time. So he's given us the benefit of his feeling about the matter, that he's not too sure about going into what is referred to as the legality or legalisms of this whole strike thing. And as he said, I was just looking at this subject, and strikes have been going on forever. I think there's a record here that the first strike happened way back in the Netherlands, somewhere around 1152, and under the rule of this and that. So it's been going on from prehistoric times, and the rulers then were astonished, caught pants down by this strike, and ever since then there's been this contention as to how legally right is it for people to go on strike, which is a form of rebellion, which is what Reverend Dominic was talking about. But the issues are there, the contentions are there. And by the way, labor is not alone in saying that the conditions are very, very tough and that we don't have a living wage. People are talking about a minimum wage. I think I've heard conversation along the lines of worry about a living wage, not a minimum wage, and that good governance, add that too. If you throw that into the pot, then there will be less instances of this. But since legalism sort of came into it, people have begun to talk about how legal was it to go on strike. Labor itself has its own array of legal aspects. I think I've heard them talk about, look, government has not, held their side of many legal decisions that were made in the past. But let me not go on. I have someone from Cross River. Who is calling in from Cross River?
Stephen.
Stephen, good morning, sir. Go right ahead.
Sir.
Go right ahead, please.
Stephen calling from Cross River, Ebru Chibara.
You're very welcome. Please go ahead, Stephen.
In fact, I am disappointed on behalf of every Nigerian. The strike, everybody, we do not expect that the strike should be called up by this time. Because the abnormality, things are getting wrong. A national item, which is not even the problem the Nigeria are looking at. Look at the hunger, look at what is going on. And our Mr. President is taking everybody to be a tata, a child. Whatever he feels like, that is what he's doing. He's not caring about the hunger, what the Nigeria are passing through. Okay, if he feel like we should go back to our own national anthem, what about the price, the fuel, and the things, our food items, which we normally buy? Hello, sir.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Please, I am pleading.
Okay.
I am pleading that even as they strike, whether they call it relax or whatever, Nigeria are not happy.
Indeed.
In fact, Jesus Christ asked his disciples that, what do people say about me? What do people really say? The president should ask the nation, what is really going on? What is people saying about me? What are people talking about?
All right. All right. But I'll tell you what, Stephen, thank you very much for your contribution. But from your point of view, do you think it was legal of NLC to go on strike? Or do you think, like Reverend Dominic, that leave legal to one side, the country had? Do you have a thought on whether or not it was legal? Oh, I think we lost, okay. The guy with his hand on the button had sort of disconnected that particular caller, not knowing that I was going to ask a follow-up question. But that is our thrust today. Whatever you may think, we will soon have valuable legal perspective on that question in the person of Dr. Tunji Abayomi, a constitutional lawyer who is on the way to the studio as we speak. It does happen now and again. So the whole question of this particular legalism was the Nigerian Labour Congress within its rights. They certainly say that they are, but the question is being asked that when you look at all that has happened, you look at what was lost in those 2 days, quite frankly, at least more than 1 day of actively, taking on the effects of the strike. But Garba in Makurdi, did I get that right? Garba in Makurdi, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Thank you very much for calling in.
Let me go this way expressly, Uncle Yori.
Sure.
In fact, we have to ask ourselves a simple question. What's the genesis of all this strike and opening the national grid? Is the federal government fault? It's due time to implement, to revisit minimum wage. We all agree with that. There's a law binding it. It's apartheid. When the government do the right thing, all this will not happen. I always ask myself a question. When you see something going wrong, ask yourself, what's the cost of it? Everyone will not have the money to go to the strike again. I think the government do the needful. Negotiation is going on. Therefore, say they will not agree with 60,000. What the government supposed to do? Call them again. Keep on negotiating. Let's see them, their intent. Let them be intentional. But the government feels like they don't have mind towards it. Look at what's going on. Tell me, how much is basket of tomato now? How much is bag of rice now? How much is cup of garri? How much is 60,000? What is our Dominic said? What 60,000 will be for you today? You have a children, and as an African, no Nigerian that is working, living wage, are looking as a collective wage that you don't have 1 or 2% for his family that is taken care of. So what 60,000 will do for him? How much you pay school fees? How much you pay medical bills? How much you pay transportation? Ask yourself these questions. I'm telling you, as someone said now, Nigerians are not.
Well, thank you very much, Garba, for calling in. Just before we lost the call, we did get the gist, and thank you very much for it. If you're just joining us, we intend to look at the legal angle with a professional, a constitutional lawyer, in fact, Dr. Tunji Abayomi, who is on his way to the studio. But in the meantime, Nigerians, because we're all, what do they call us? We're all interested parties. Every last Nigerian, especially those who took the brunt of the strike, the point is often made that you have a strike like this. It is not the high and mighty that are affected most by it. It is the very people, the very part of society that labor is, speaking for and fighting for that suffer the most. And so, in a non-legal sort of way, there are many people who feel that that strike was not useful at all, simply because it affected me, the ordinary Nigerian, negatively. My condition was already bad. You now add, for those who depend entirely on electricity, for example, for their sustenance and livelihood, I was not able to do any work on those days. Even in the best of times, we can't be guaranteed a full stretch of electricity. So for those kind of non-legal commentaries, we're just asking ordinary Nigerians. In the meantime, by the way, I can tell you that Dr. Tunji Abayomi is in the studio. So, but we have prefaced this by, asking, what does the ordinary Nigerian feel? And good morning to you, Dr. Tunji Abayomi. Thank you very much for coming in.
I apologize to your audience.
Yes.
I had the life of a lawyer. It's not in his hand. It's in the hand of clients. And I had my best client call from London.
Oh, okay.
It was hard to attend.
One understands it.
And it was an emergency, and it's an older person.
Thank you very much for, indeed, for still putting us in the mix, even at that.
So terribly so.
So it's okay, because I'm sure people will be relieved that you are here now, so they don't have Yori Folani postulating. I didn't dare shout. What I did was to say, in the meantime, let us ordinary people who are stakeholders in this, let us, I beg your pardon? Let us ordinary people have our own bit, our own say, before the professional comes in and talks to us from the point of view of law. But even before then, on that line of what I've been saying, Mahmoud has called in. Good morning, Mahmoud. Oh dear, I lost Mahmoud, who was calling in from Mahmoud in Kaduna State. I think he's immediately trying to get back in. I understand that we lost him. Well, sorry about that, Mahmoud. Now we have our expert in the house. We've been hearing, and just by the way, Dr. Abayomi, just a couple of calls, maybe 2 or 3 of them, and they've said that, look, this strike business, this strike thing, don't bring the law into it. It's a matter of, it's a feeling. It's a rebellion against untenable conditions. And so don't bring the law into it when I'm suffering, when I'm hungry, when I can't think straight, when my whole life has been turned upside down. You say I shouldn't go on strike. So this is a fine place for us to say, Dr. Abayomi, what are the legal angles to this strike?
Well, first and foremost, it's important that if we don't have law in a society, you have chaos.
Did we have chaos on the day of the strike in Nigeria?
Well,
airports were not up. The grid was shut down.
Well, that's really the problem. Here, it's important to understand that the intention of law usually is to create a balance between rights and responsibility. Now, in the case of strike, the intention of the law is that people have a right to associate to protect their interests within the contemplation of law. In other words, the freedom to associate is not unlimited, like all freedoms. Otherwise, if we don't have controlled freedom, you have chaos. You have a situation where somebody can take a dagger in exercise of freedom to do whatever he likes.
Yes, but sir, exploring these legalities that you spoke about, there's the right to legally gather, associate.
Subject to the dictates of law. It's not unlimited.
Now, where does strike come in? Where does gathering become a strike?
Okay, now, the first and foremost, before you go on strike, the law establishes some conditions that must be established. The other issue is that strike itself is for the purposes of protecting the terms of employment. we will look at a whole lot of the way things work in this country. We are really not guided sufficiently by the rule of law. The other issue is that the law does not allow you to go on industrial action in certain situations. For example,
industrial action and strike.
Strike, basically the same thing. You know.
Okay.
Now, when you are talking of essential services, there is a ban. I think it's under Section 31(6) of the Trade Union Act and Trade Disputes.
Okay.
It's restricted. In fact, the position is that you cannot even go on strike if you are an employee within the essential service sector.
Okay. But
you have to have been working for non-essential service sector before you can go on strike.
Now, the national grid certainly must be part of the essential services.
Well, certainly it is.
Certainly it is.
There are lots of utilities, national grid, hospitals, etc.
You can't go on strike.
You cannot.
The police,
you are not allowed. Police,
firefighters,
and so on and so forth. The whole issue is that you cannot hold the nation to ransom. The nation must continue. Let us also understand that there are people who are not employed or people who are employed on their own in a nation. And the nation belongs to both the employees who are entitled to go on strike to protect the terms of employment and non-employees. In other words, the nation covers all of them. Therefore, as employees, you cannot hold the nation to ransom to the detriment of others who are not in your sector.
Okay.
That's a balance. The other issue is that there are some essential services that are absolutely necessary for the running of a nation.
And so you can
all the interests of its citizens. For example, in the hospital, you need power. Let us say somebody is on oxygen support. He needs electricity in order to continue that support. When you withdraw the electricity, then what happens? You expose him to death. No nation will allow that. Now you are talking of security and so on and so forth. So you must first of all be in non-essential sector before you can participate
legally in a strike.
Legally in a strike.
So if anybody in the essentials, such as you have explained it to us, was to take part in that strike, it's quite frankly an illegal act.
It is actually an illegal act. You can be charged to court for that because you're actually violating the law.
So the point that was made by Labour, for example, by its leadership in explaining that, first of all, we denounced the federal government saying that we had anything to do with it, but that as an affiliate member of the NLC, the grid workers were bound to comply with this strike. You've just shown us.
Well, but the point is that the very law to strike is taken from the law, the Trade Union Act. You cannot take part of the law and reject part of the law. You are exercising your right to go on industrial action because the law gives you that right as part of the freedom of association under Section 40 of the Constitution. Now, even now say that, because you are a member and affiliate and you disregard part of that law, I think that no nation would accept that.
Indeed. But as you know, it would appear that the government is playing a kind of softball with this because there are emotions involved and for instance, government is not explaining it as starkly as you are.
Yes.
So that must have been in an effort to maintain the peace and almost a bit like the Yoruba proverb about call the guy who has problems upstairs, call him the husband of the wife.
Yes.
So that we can go and so that we can sort out. So that we can sort out.
I think the problem of our nation is that there's too much anger.
Let me come back for you to explain that.
Yes.
Let me quickly go on a break. Stay with us, please. We'll be right back.